Hey guys, it's Khadroth again. Today, for this guide video, we're going to talk to you guys a little bit about your craft essence priorities, kind of what to look for in them, what to keep your eyes out for in the future, and just in general, how to manage them for your account. So to start out with, I'd like to talk about why craft essences can be so important. Whenever you slap a craft essence on a servant of yours, it can further augment their abilities. So you can use it to make up for the deficiencies in a servant's kit, or you can use it to just further augment something they're already amazing at. A lot of the craft essences we're going to try to target here are going to be craft essences that we think are both generally usable by a lot of units in the game, as well as particularly strong for damage output. And the reason for that tends to be that a lot of the game centers around overall a damage meta. It centers around trying to push as much damage as fast as you can, as many times as you can in a row. And so it's one of the things that we look for in a lot of our craft essences. So craft essences that have a scalable attack stat on them, that's why you want to level them up. The attack stat can be a huge determinant in damage, as you can take someone like, say, Jalter, who already has an insane attack stat, but then you can also put on a craft essence that, if it's all attack scaling at level 100, if you've gotten it leveled up to that point, that can add another 2000 attack power to that already insane attack stat. You can take servants to new heights that they never would have been able to get to before, and that's why this can be such an important thing. It's going to allow you to push the capabilities of your account, and especially as a more free-to-play player, it's going to allow you to stretch those MP levels where maybe you only had NP1 versus that mega whale out there having NP5. Your NP1 might hit a lot harder with a level 100 craft essence than they would have otherwise with just a normal level 15 MLB or something like that. And with that in mind, we come to some CEs that are typically okay if we start looking at the overall effect of them. So you guys can see here on Halloween Princess, it has a very good MLB effect. This is an older CE from the original Halloween event that you can no longer acquire, but it had NP damage of 20% with 50% NP gauge. So that sounds really strong, but so why don't you see a lot of people advocating for leveling it up? Well, part of it is this split stats over here on the right side. So the fact that it isn't all attack scaling and it does have some HP leveling in the mix is one of the reasons that you won't see a lot of people advocating for leveling it. And the reason there is because there tends to be nowadays in the game a lot better equivalents that can do something similar to this but actually scale better. And I've actually seen the math breakdown between, say, Halloween Princess and Golden Sumo, and Halloween Princess and Holy Night Supper, and a bunch of other useful CEs. And the fact remains is, if you're not leveling anything, Halloween Princess is still perfectly fine. But the second you start leveling your CEs, this one begins to lag behind. And it's one thing I wanted to point out to you because it's a very good example that I know I can talk about with you guys. As such, our number one determinant when we look at craft essences for leveling priority is going to be, does it have all attack scaling? If it goes 500 to 2000, you're good. If it has any HP on it, you probably don't want to level it. It doesn't mean there aren't circumstances where you might. There are. It just means for most of your priority, you want something that's going to help you push damage. You want something that's going to help your units hit harder and get through nodes faster and farm more efficiently, rather than something that necessarily makes you tankier. And there are circumstances where you're going to want that, particularly in challenge content. But it is one of the reasons that I have this methodology here, and it has served me well throughout all of my years of playing FGO. And so, just to reiterate, the number one thing I'm going to look for when targeting a craft essence to level is going to be, does it scale with attack? So that is our number one determinant. From there, we start considering a whole bunch of other effects of the CEs, and it's how can it be useful. And I'm going to go through these with you guys in the sense of, like, here's some priorities you want. I'm not going to go through with you every craft essence because of the fact that I want this guide to be a little bit more future-proof. If I just list quote unquote the best CEs for every single thing, you guys aren't going to be able to use your brain when it comes to new craft essences coming into the game. Instead, I'm going to tell you what I look for and what the current sort of metas are and why I want to find craft essences like these. Now, the number one craft essence on everybody's list list, and this will hold true probably for all of time in FGO, is going to be Kaleidoscope. Why? It's basically the perfect craft essence. It's one of the hardest to get. It's been in the game since the beginning of the game, but why is it so sought after? It's because it gives you the most starting charge out of any craft essence in the game, especially at MLB, where it literally just allows you to start with a full bar of NP gauge. And then on top of that, it is all attack scaling, so it makes it a very good CE to level up, and it's one of the #1 priorities I'm going to tell you guys. If you have K-Scope in your account, level it. Now, that being said, please don't make the mistake of trying to combine your K-Scopes before you can get the 5 copies to max limit break it. If you do that, you're gonna be in a world of hurt later on when you possibly need multiple K-Scopes in the same wave. Just be careful with that. I will say there's a special mention nowadays to the fact that looping is so prevalent, and it can be better to have 1 MLB K-Scope as opposed to, say, 5 singles. That does lend a little bit to your decision making, but in most cases you are going to want to at least have, say, 2 separate K-Scopes instead of 1 combined level 40 K-Scope. That's not doing you any good. Please keep them separate until you can MLB at least. But yes, getting to your Noble Phantasm faster is typically almost always going to be a good thing. Obviously there's going to be fights where you can be drained, where you can be debilitated and not be able to get it off right away, and so K-Scope isn't the one-stop solution for every fight in the game, but it certainly helps out with farming, which is, well, pretty much 99% of the game right now. It can be very, very useful to have, and if you ever get the opportunity to acquire one, by all means take it. I don't think Delightworks is ever going to give us a free K-Scope banner. It never has. It probably never will. The closest thing we ever got to it was the original first banner of the game, where there were no other craft essences in the game. And that's why you'll hear people occasionally make a joke of like a story banner or something else that doesn't have rate up craft essences being a quote unquote K-Scope rate up banner. It's not actually a K-Scope rate up banner. The joke is just that it's a lot easier to acquire there because there's nothing competing in the pool. And yet still a lot easier is maybe a couple of fractions of a percentage point easier. It's not actually easy to acquire still. But that can be the overall problem with trying to acquire any craft essences. As the game goes on, the general pool of craft essences gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and so the odds of pulling any one particular craft essence can be ever increasingly minuscule. But enough about K-Scope. Another craft essence that I like to try and prioritize are craft essences that have starting charge with a various effect. Again, doubly so if they actually scale with all attacks. So here you guys can see Golden catches the Carp. Golden Carp is, again, not necessarily that acquirable, but there are other CEs like it, like the one we just got in the Ketsmith event, where they don't necessarily have starting charge in that one's case, but they do provide crit stars when someone rotates into the battle. The thing that we're looking for here is, do you have starting charge and then another beneficial effect to my party? And a lot of the craft essences I seek to level are these, because they tend to be very specific and tailored while still giving you that edge towards getting to your Noble Phantasm early. So again, things like Golden Catches the Carp, Holy Night Supper, Aerial Drive, and then again there's going to be some upcoming this year on NA, like the one in Summer 4, which is the Suzuka one, Heavenly Demon Princess, which is like Holy Night Supper, only it's specific to arts card critical damage, and it's still all attack scaling, and this is a welfare one, so you guys will be able to get all 5 copies. And then the other one that will be the one that comes out with this Christmas here, which is Traces of Christmas, and Traces of Christmas is a very good one for quick. It has starting charge, quick performance, and NP generation, so it's going to be a good one for facilitating looping on a quick servant. And again, it's all attack scaling, and it's a welfare one, so you guys will get all the copies. There's some really good options for you upcoming that will be a good idea to invest in. But again, in the interest of future-proofing this guide, I'm not going to try and cover every single option here. I mean, there's plenty of others like Aerial Drive, Golden Sumo, and others that are really good to invest in. It just depends. So let's talk to you guys about some of the other craft essences I look for. Another one to keep you guys' eyes out for is any sort of craft essence that facilitates looping. No secret now that Castoria has come out on JP and basically made arts looping super efficient. NA will be headed there soon, so it's a really good idea to have craft essences like this. And on screen you guys can see Royal Icing. Royal Icing is an amazing welfare type CE that you should have gotten 5 copies from the Oniland event. It will have a rerun this year on NA. The reason this one's super nice is because it increases both arts performance and NP damage by a lot, lot, and it's all attack scaling again. There are other equivalents to this that aren't welfare, like Sign of a Smiling Face or Knowing the Way Broadly, both of which are New Year's campaign CEs. They're a little bit more whaley, so the reason you'll see me advocating for Royal Icing is just because it's something that most of you guys can still acquire and is a really good idea, but it has no starting charge. However, Arts as a card type, as a system, doesn't really need starting charge as long as the person can refund enough. Castoria really excels in that, and you can start out a lot of people with a starting NP generation CE or Arts up CE that will help them handle it. So it's a good idea to get your hands on one of these for the future. And speaking of Knowing the Way Broadly, this is an amazing craft essence that'll be coming up on our next New Year's campaign for 2022. This is a good idea to have because it does facilitate looping like we already talked about, but it also has Ignore Invincibility. And so that's another type of craft essence you guys want to make sure you get in your kit. You need something that's going to allow you to ignore invincibility because it can be a really good idea for certain fights where the boss just has an annoying gimmick. You can't quite get through it with the unit you want to take. So like your ideal unit doesn't have sure hit, doesn't have invulnerability pierce, doesn't have buff removal or anything like that in their kit, and you need something to help them. That's where you rely on the craft essence or a mystic code to help get you through. And another really good one to this effect is Sweet Crystal. This one can actually be got in the Rare Prism shop right now, as we talked about in the Rare Prism guide. This one was a past Valentine's craft essence, but it's really good because at MLB it has Ignore Invincibility and 50% starting charge. So you can use this to kind of get you halfway to your NP, charge them up a little bit more to full, and still be able to pierce whatever annoying defense the enemy has. So a lot of the ones that I see people needing but not having that can be really good for both challenge content and story content alike is a Taunt CE. They're very hard to get your hands on nowadays on either server, and it becomes a little difficult if you need taunters but you don't have enough taunting units in your roster. Getting something like, say, Outrage here, which actually tends to be available in the Chaldea Boys gachas, can be a good idea. There's plenty of other options with regards to this, including Guda Guda Poster Girl, and I believe there's one for Halloween's old events as well. But typically speaking, you want to have at least one somewhere in your kit to give you this option. This way you can put it on anyone and allow them to get taunted and rotated out if they die. Thus, you can use it to almost act as a plug suit for you or something like that. And again, you will see other units coming into the game like Chen Gong in the future that allow this as well. And it can be a great tool for setting up team comps and rotating buffers in and out of the party or nukers or whatever you need. So in general, try to keep your eyes peeled for a Taunt craft essence and make sure you acquire one. Other good craft essence types can be stuff like Prisma Cosmos, where you can get charge per turn, and this can be really good in long drawn out fights where you could have gone with K-Scope or Sakurascope or any of the other starting Charge CEs to try and get you to your NP faster at the beginning, but maybe you know this is going to be a long and drawn out fight and you want the NP charge per turn to facilitate even more looping of NPs. And where I typically like to use these are on my support casters. It can really help them get back to their next NP faster. So say Merlin if you want him to be able to heal, or Tamamo if you want her to be able to heal the party as well as reduce cooldowns and charge the party as well. It can be a really good idea to slap one of these on one of them, and that can help them out there. And then over here we have Fragments of 2030. This is the star equivalent of Prisma Cosmos, and this can be good as well if you need the party to generate stars. I'll say this though, if we're in a long protracted fight, like say a situation where we needed Prisma, I often see people using fragments in those situations. You can, and it's not the worst thing to put on, but I found that if you're using say Merlin and you're looping his NP a lot, you typically don't need Fragments of 2030 in because he's generating plenty of stars to generate a ton of crits, and it might actually be more beneficial to have a different craft essence, including something like Prisma on him instead. I think this one can be really good if you just have a comp that's devoid of star generation and you really are going to need to hit hard and card your way through things. Fragments can be an amazing tool for getting more stars into that party. Now we come to Ox Demon King. Ox Demon King can be a very useful tool for replacing a missing bond craft essence or something like that. I hope in the future that they add other craft essences like this for Quicken Arts, but for right now, Ox Demon King is kind of the only one of its type, and it's only for Buster. It's a really great CE because it increases the entire party's Buster performance for 3 turns when equipped. This can be an amazing one for putting on a support caster or something, and then rotating them into the party and giving the party a buff just by virtue of them entering. Where that can be super important is when we're dealing with raid and blitz style of events where we really need to do a lot of damage in 1 turn, and this can be an amazing way of boosting that damage. So you can slap this on, say, a Merlin, and it will increase the party's Buster performance by more than his actual bond CE would. However, this is the equivalent of Waver's bond CE, so it's pretty close analog in that regard. Again, this could be really useful in those raid events, so I hope in the future they add something like this for Quicker Arts. So another good one to keep your eyes peeled for is anything that gives you a good amount of defense. There's stuff like Holy Shroud of Magdalene that gives defense against males, and other ones like the Mash Valentine CE, which can give a lot of good defense too. But Volumen Hydragium is another good one because it basically is going to get you Invuln for 3 attacks, which can be super nice on a lot of tanky units to begin with. So say something like a Hercules or a Coup Altar that are really tanky anyways, you can actually pop this on them and it's not going to consume their dodge stacks as this is getting used. So it can further make someone even tankier, or at least allow them to survive a couple of attacks or turns until you need them to do whatever their purpose in the party is. So it's a good idea to have one of these in your kit as well. So another category to look at here is craft essences that give you some sort of tangible benefit on the defeat of the unit. This sort of strategy is used in a lot of challenge content, story content, or solos. You'll see people use this in order to charge the party's gauge when a unit is defeated, or like in the case of 500-Year Obsession, to curse and NP seal the enemy. So there's some good options here. It's a really good idea to have these in your kit, and actually a special honorable mention now to bond craft essences. You guys can see here Georgios's bond CE is actually really amazing. This is his bond 10 craft essence, and there's again other bond CEs out here that are also amazing, like Hercs and various others like Waivers that can be super useful to your party. The real problem with bond CEs is the fact that they have set stats. You cannot level them up beyond this, and this is actually something that I'm hoping in the future Delightworks changes and improves, because this would actually be a way of making bond craft essences a lot more usable to the party, since a lot of them are just kind of stat stick craft essences. But Georgios's again is very amazing. It grants the party invincibility for 1 attack and reduces damage taken by 1,000 for 3 turns after his defeat. So it is a very, very tanky craft essence and can be used in a lot of solos to really help people out. Another one is Ideal Holy King. This one can be a really good one to pick up because not only increases the party's HP by 1200 at MLB, but it also includes the sub member. So you can actually put this on a front wave that's going to get wiped out by a boss and it'll still have effect, or you can put this on a backline that you expect to never participate in the fight. So this can be a really sort of good craft essence for beefing up your characters and making them not quite able to just be carted down. It's another way to really kind of pad your stats. The last one I really want to talk to you guys about is Demonic Bodice Vada. And Demonic Bodice Vada has 2 things that are really important about it. No, it's not attack scaling completely, but it still can be a good one to have in your kit. The first thing I want to talk about is the fact that it's 60% starting charge. And I want to say, guys, please, please, please do not sleep on craft essences that have different starting charges than say 50% or 75%. There are some really, really good ideas that you can use them on people that have those weird charges in their own kit. So talking about say a 20% starting charge craft essence might be able to be used with someone like Sanzang or Paracelsus to get all the way to full. Something like Demonic Boss Vada with 60% can be used with someone like say Ushi Assassin or John Archer, someone like that has 40% charge in their kit as well. And even still, you could use Demonic Bodice Vada with say a nuker who then also has double Merlin supports in the party to get them to full with their 20% charges. There's a lot you guys can do here, and the important part about it is going to be the overcharge effect here. This is the other thing I want to talk about. You guys are in the future going to want to have craft essences that have this, not just because they're strong in their own right, but also because there is another grouping of servants that really benefit from this. To explain this again, we talked about this in the NP guide video. You guys really want to be able to increase overcharge for certain select servants that get a really good effect out of their overcharge ability. Remember, overcharges don't always increase damage. In certain cases, yeah, it might, and increasing the overcharge by 2 in Demonic Bodhisvata's case is a really good idea, because it might make them hit super hard. So even someone like Arash can do an insane amount of damage with enough overcharge. There's also servants like Castoria in the future that get even more stacks of their solemn defense, their true invulnerability, that is really going to help them with having that overcharge ability. One of the better CEs coming out for them in the future is the One Who Desires Salvation here. This one's amazing, and it's going to be a permanent one with the release for Lost Belt 5. Basically at MLB can increase overcharge by 2 stages for 4 times. That's insane. That means for the next 4 NPs, they're going to get overcharge. That could be more damage, that could be more stacks of the solemn defense like we talked about. So there's some really good uses for this, and I can't emphasize this sort of stuff enough, but you are going to probably want to at least pick up one of the craft essences, even if it's not MLB or something like that. It's still really strong and a really good tool for your kit. Okay, now just for some other miscellany. I've had some people ask me, like, Cad, you know, what's the actual priority order for leveling CEs? How do you determine when or not to roll for a CE? And it's going to depend. Typically speaking, I'm not going to advocate for you guys to roll for craft essences. It's not a good idea if you're free to play in most cases, but there are some unique craft essences like we talked about in this video that are really good to acquire. There's going to be some that are just kind of hard to get otherwise, like the Taunt CEs, that you really probably want to take a risk on. But otherwise, again, I can't really advocate for it. Most of the time I'm going to tell you guys to save for the, you know, units you love, the units that really make you want to play the game and that sort of stuff. The characters are really what drive FGO for a lot of people. So I can't advocate too much for rolling for craft essences. And with that in mind, even stuff like trying to roll out friend points for craft essences, like we talked about earlier, the pool gets bigger and bigger over time for all the available craft essences. And that's why you can go over 100k friend points without ever getting a craft essence for an event. So I'm not going to tell you not to do it, just, you know, use your brain when you decide to do it. I would only do it if it's absolutely pivotal to you and you can afford to use the friend points there. Otherwise, I'm going to tell you guys to hold your friend points for those double and triple success rate chances where you can make a lot of craft essence bombs and really level up these craft essences. Which also is a good segue to bring in. Remember, guys, I do have a CE leveling guide that you guys can follow to make craft essence bombs and you know, do it in an efficient manner. That's really going to help you out. But so for general priority purposes, like I have people ask me, like, Cad, what should I do? And so, like, the first one I'm always going to go with is K-Scope. If I have K-Scope in my party, I'm leveling it. From there, I tend to go with one of the 50% powerful CEs. And actually, I prefer, personally, I see a lot of people say Golden Sumo. I actually don't prefer Golden Sumo. I've seen the math behind it, and while Golden Sumo is amazing, it basically gets outclassed if you're 3-turning or NPing a lot. So it's one of those things where I would rather prefer to have, say, an aerial drive leveled up, a heavenly demon princess like the Suzuka CE from Summer 4 coming up, or even Traces of Christmas, something that's going to help facilitate the farming a little bit better, but it just depends. And Golden Sumo, where it really gets a lot of benefit is, okay, maybe we've got break bars in the mix and it's not just going to be a 3-turn, so you're going to want to NP and still keep carding. That's where that's going to be really nice for you. But so typically I'll do one of those, then I'll step down and try to do one of those looping craft essences that we talked about. So something that is like Royal Icing or Sign of a Smiling Face. Those can be really good for you guys for your arts loopers. But like I said, typically I will try to get a bunch of the 50% CEs up and running. So again, there's a whole bunch of them out there. Here is Fandom's craft essence page, and you guys can see it actually has an amazing craft essence list by effect. So if you're trying to look up a CE that has one particular thing that you need to know, it's a really good idea. Maybe you're playing on JP and you can't read, so you can actually look them up by their image. And then there's also the craft essence ID that you can use to look it up. There's a lot of good tools here that you guys can see, and I think it's a good idea to keep one of these in your back pocket, some sort of reference or resource, so that you guys can help yourself manage these a lot better. But yeah, overall, I think there's a lot of craft essences out there you guys should try to prioritize. And we didn't actually go over a lot of the low-level craft essences in this video, but again, there are some really good ones out there like Dragon's Meridian or Battle of Camland, where they're just super good for you guys at a low level, and you should definitely make sure you keep a couple of copies locked down at MLB. But again, I think you guys can figure something out even with the low level craft essences, and it's why I tried to make this video guide more of a generic one rather than like, hey, do K-scope, hey, do, you know, this craft essence, because I wanted to get you guys in the mindset of, yes, there are, you know, a whole category of CEs like this that are good to focus on. So I hope this video guide helped you. Again, we're going to wrap things up here, but guys, if you haven't already, be sure to join the Discord. We have a great community on there. I'll put the link as well as the fandom link for the craft essence guides in the description below. And again, be sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. It helps the channel out, and let me know what you want to see for the next one. So good night, guys. Have a good one.